So welcome once again. My name is Madison Dodds, and I'm a member of the Salk Institute's Education Outreach team. I'm so excited to be back with you today. This event is a Salk tradition. This is our 31st annual event, and we're excited to continue in a virtual space. This is an event that not only that our team looks forward to each and every year, but it's something Salk researchers also look forward to. And throughout this week, they are very excited to interact with you. So please make sure to ask those questions, and I'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. So the Salk Institute is not an acronym. It's named after Dr. Jonas Salk. You may have heard his name recently in the news as he was a key player in another public health crisis, the polio epidemic of the 1940s and 50s. Dr. Salk developed the first safe and effective polio vaccine. He then went on to pursue another dream, which was to create a collaborative environment where researchers could explore the basic principles of life. 60 years later, the Salk Institute is a world-renowned basic biological research facility. Located on the coastal bluffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean in La Jolla, California, the Salk Institute is right across the street from the University of California, San Diego, or UCSD. The institute was designed by Dr. Jonas Salk and architect Louis Kahn, and is considered an architectural treasure. The Salk welcomed over 40,000 people each year to campus prior to the pandemic. And you might notice in this image, atop all four of the major buildings, the Institute has 2,352 solar panels that provide renewable energy to the campus. Earlier this week, we had a chance to hear from some of our researchers, a part of the Harnessing Plants initiative. So being green and environmentally friendly is very important to hear here at Salk. A little bit about the event today. So the first step's already here. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get started with some information about the program, along with some other opportunities that we have for high school students. If you'd like to pursue a career in STEM, or you just want to explore that a little bit more. Then we'll go into our virtual lab tour featuring the Laboratory of Genetics under the direction of Dr. Rusty Gage. And then we'll end with a panel discussion with some of the amazing scientists that are working in the lab. So each lab tour is a standalone experience. So you're welcome to attend only the events that align with your interests, or all of them if you wish. We recommend checking out at least a couple of them because you might be intrigued by a field you've never even considered before. While we're hopeful that the event is going to run smoothly, please be patient if any technical issues do arise. We do have someone standing by to address technical issues, so if something happens, please email us at education@salk.edu. We will also be sending all of the event recordings to all registered attendees after the event, so you can catch up on some of the ones you may have missed. What we're really excited about this event is hearing from you. So I want to talk a little bit about how to submit student questions, as well as where to find some more information about our panelists. So we're going to be using these student questions to guide our panel discussion. To submit a question, you're going to click the form linked in the video description down here in each of the videos. You're welcome to submit as many questions as you'd like, and we'll get to as many as we can. If you want to learn a little bit more about the lab's research, or you want to read a little bit more about our panelists today and their bios, you're going to click the Show More, and you'll see a link to the event page on our website. You're welcome to submit questions for an individual panelist or for the entire panel to consider. So if you're interested in programs for high school students, the first one I'd like to share is the High Top Bodie High School Summer Scholars Program. This is an 8-week program that takes place in the summer. The first week is a biotech boot camp that's a crash course in all things biotechnology, and then it's followed up with 7 weeks in the lab paid. You'll have the opportunity to conduct research side by side with the Salk mentor scientists, and then you have the opportunity to present your science and develop some science communication skills that'll be really helpful in the future. Apart from being in the lab, you'll also have supplemental opportunities throughout the summer, like industry visits, seminars, and other events. So we are very hopeful the program will take place this summer, but it is dependent on the public health recommendations at the time. Please check out our website to see an update on the program's status. A couple things about some of the interns in this photo. So these two interns down here were in the stem cell core facility. So our stem cell core facility will be featured on Friday. So if you want to know what these big tanks are in the background or why they're wearing these gloves, that could be a great question to ask later this week. We do have another program that's an opportunity for you to get involved from a distance. The Introduction to Research Science and Communication virtual program is a 5-week professional development opportunity. This program is open to all high school students that were U.S. residents in the 2021 school year. This event is mostly asynchronous, about 5 to 10 hours per week, and it's based off of skills that are a part of the High-Toph-Brody High School Summer Scholars Program. The program elements include reading scientific journal articles, analyzing data, preparing a scientific presentation, and virtual labs. All of your work throughout the summer culminates towards a capstone project where you're able to research and present on a topic of your interest. The program lottery for this program is currently open, and a link to the form can be found on our website. The deadline to apply for this program is March 31st, so make sure to get your entry in. I just threw a lot of information at you, and you might have some questions about any of the programs that I had mentioned. So please make sure to connect with us if you have any questions. We can be reached at education@salk.edu. You can also check out our website for more information, including a frequently asked questions page. Now, what we do is not possible without the generosity and support of many organizations. So March of Dimes High School Science Day was made possible through the generous support of the Anne and Neil Blue High School Science Fund. Our sincere thanks to the Blue family, Salk supporters, our partners, and volunteers that make Salk Education Outreach possible, including the March of Dimes. So now it's time to get started for my favorite part of the event. Today, our virtual lab tour will be featuring the Laboratory of Genetics under the direction of Dr. Rusty Gage. Each video gives a glimpse of what a day in the life of a scientist is like. Each video was designed and filmed by the scientists, and each one is unique. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to learn about some different career options and see what is happening inside the lab. Our scientists are excited to share, and it's my pleasure to introduce the virtual lab tour featuring the Laboratory of Genetics under the direction of Dr. Rusty Gage.
Hello, I'm Ravi. In the Gage lab, we use cutting-edge techniques in cell biology and genetics to investigate the brain and nervous system. We study many topics, including psychiatric disorders like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, as well as neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. We also pursue questions related to normal development and maintenance of the nervous system. Our research helps us understand and better develop diagnostic tools for these diseases, as well as treatment for those who are suffering. This important work is accomplished with a large team of scientists from all over the world with a unique role in our lab.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm an undergraduate student in the lab. I'm studying biochemistry and cell biology, and I'm a senior at UCSD. Undergrads work part-time, or we receive course credit assisting in research being done at the lab. We learn on the job how to perform different techniques and the science behind them.
Hi, my name is Desiree Ramirez, and I work as a research assistant at the Salk Institute. I graduated last year from UCSD and majored in biochemistry. In my current position, I assist a postdoc on her project.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a staff scientist. People in this position normally work on multiple research projects, write papers, go to conferences, and mentor younger scientists in the lab.
My name is Lynn Moore. I'm a lab manager at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies in Dr. Fred Gage's lab. I got my degree from San Diego State in 1980 and have been in the field of neuroscience ever since.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm the laboratory administrator in the Gage lab at the Salk Institute. I provide administrative support to the lab's PI and lab members. This includes, for example, hiring personnel, accounting, grants coordination, and scheduling meetings.
Hi, I'm Rusty Gage. I'm the PI of the Gage lab. PI is a principal investigator. So my job is to come up with the general themes that we'll do research on at the laboratory.
I was looking to gain research experience, and so my second year I applied to this position by emailing the lab manager. I was taught most of my skills such as cell culture, PCR, immunofluorescent, microscopy from the ground up, so don't feel like you have to have a lot of experience when you come into this position.
I knew I needed lab experience, so I volunteered in a lab on campus. And then from that lab on campus, I got an internship, a paid internship because I needed money. And I started off working at a dining hall, but that wasn't going to help me advance in my career. Once I got this internship, I worked there for my last 2 years of college. Then that helped, all the experience I gained there helped me get my position at the Salk.
I worked in a research lab in undergrad, and my mentor there encouraged me to apply to grad school. Before I applied, I went and got some extra experience at a government research institute. Then I did a PhD in neuroscience and came straight here to the Gage lab after I graduated.
I was originally a technician working in biochemistry and molecular biology, but many years later I became a lab manager, and now I help out with finances, personnel issues, organizational issues, and structure in general.
My path to this position does not include a science education, but includes an associate's degree, along with a lot of on-the-job training. Organizational and problem-solving skills are important to be able to keep a lab running smoothly.
My senior year of high school, I discovered more about better health, and so I wanted to do that for myself. And upon learning, I realized that for me, science helps put things together because it's very logical, it makes more sense. And so that's why I wanted to pursue STEM.
I majored in biology as an undergrad, and I knew early on that the brain was the most interesting part of the body to me. I wanted to know more about how the brain lets humans and other animals interact with the world around them, and why they tend to behave the way that they do.
My driving force to go into science was to better mankind. On the side, I also get to better myself, to expand my mind, not only scientifically, but also socially. I don't believe I would have had that exposure in other fields.
My interest is in the brain, and I'm particularly interested in what we call the plasticity or the flexibility of the brain, how it can change. It's not fixed, it's changed by experience. And early on, I was amazed by how after brain damage, the brain actually has mechanisms that try to heal itself. And I was interested in understanding how that process works.
One of my favorite things is that I get to put the concepts that I learned in class into practice and do the assays that I've learned about.
The benefits to working in science have not only been the opportunity to be a co-author on papers that I contributed significantly on, but also to be exposed to such a diverse group of people.
I enjoy designing experiments and trying to figure out how to solve a question that we don't have an answer to yet. I also like looking at data, trying to figure out what it means, and helping my colleagues do the same. There's always something new and interesting to talk about in a research lab.
And I really like doing science. I enjoy it. I find that it's challenging for me, but I also really like the people that are involved in science. They're generally smart and motivated to do good things, and they're curious, and I just enjoy the whole atmosphere of science all around.
Hi, my name is Sarah Fernandez, and I'm a PhD student in Dr. Gage's Laboratory of Genetics. We're a neurobiology lab. We study the human brain. I work primarily in our tissue culture area, where I work in the brain organoid model system. In our tissue culture area, we have biosafety cabinets, which allow us to manipulate our cells in a sterile environment outside of the human body. This is important because our cells don't have an immune system to protect them from bacteria or other pathogens they might encounter in the environment. We also have incubators in the tissue culture area, and these keep our cells at a consistent 37 degrees Celsius and 5% carbon dioxide. The 5% carbon dioxide helps the cultures maintain a consistent pH level. I keep the brain organoids in an incubator on a shaker, and this helps with nutrient and oxygen diffusion into the organoids. They are kind of a dense structure, so having this added nutrient and oxygen diffusion really helps their growth. The brain is a challenging organ to study. It's really complex, and it's also locked within a cranial vault, so accessing tissues of the brain can be really challenging. But one way that we can study the brain in our lab is to start with human fibroblasts. And in this image, you can see some fibroblasts, and they have this elongated, kind of spindly morphology. After we've obtained patient fibroblasts, we can begin to reprogram them to pluripotent stem cells, which means they have the potential to differentiate into any cell type of the body. And once we begin this transition process, you can see that the fibroblasts actually begin to change their morphology, or the way that they look. So they start to grow in these colonies in close contact with each other. Once we start to obtain these stem cells, we can isolate them and expand them. And then when the colonies get large enough, we can actually lift the colonies from the plate and start to add other factors, transcription factors and things, that begin to promote their differentiation towards a neuronal lineage. We can support other intrinsic properties of the stem cells and allow them to kind of self-organize into these structures. And in the upper left-hand corner, you can see one of these structures, and this is a brain organoid. So a brain organoid has different cell types that make up the brain, and it also recapitulates early processes of human brain development.
If you're thinking about a career in science, and it is your passion, I encourage you to look into it. Think about it.
Yeah, I just want to encourage you guys and say that you shouldn't be too intimidated by labs and research, because I'm sure you can do it.
I really hope that all of you will give science a try, take some science classes, and if you like it, volunteer or apply to get some work in a research laboratory, so you can find out if it's right for you. It's not right for everybody, but I certainly knew from the very beginning that this is what I want to do. Well, it's been good talking to you, and I wish you all the best in your career. Thank you. Have a great day.
This incredible group of people come together to research these neurological diseases so that we can better develop diagnostic tools as well as treatment for those who are suffering. To learn more about our work, you can always visit our website at gage.salk.edu. We're always looking for bright young scientists to help us with these projects. You can learn more about our internships at the Salk Institute and other opportunities for high school students at salk.edu/education. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all for joining us. We're really excited to have this discussion with you all today. My name is Sarah Fernandez, and I'll be the moderator. I'm from San Diego. More specifically, I'm from El Cajon. And in Dr. Gage's lab, I am a graduate student. So I'm on the path to getting my PhD. So if we can just go ahead and have Dr. Sarah Paralak introduce herself, Just if you can include your name and where you're from and what your role is in the lab. Thank
Sure.
you.
I'm Sarah Paralak. I was born in Connecticut, but I claim my hometown is Yardley, Pennsylvania. And I'm a staff scientist in the lab. And that means I do some experiments, but I also have a role in sort of keeping the lab functioning and running.
Okay, great. And then Jasmine, I'm sorry, Jasmine Ravena, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Jasmine Ravena, and I'm a second-year biology PhD student in the Gage lab. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and so the move to San Diego was a big one, but I really enjoy the research and the life in San Diego, so if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to hear them later.
Great, thanks Jasmine. And then we'll move on to Monique Schaefer.
Hi everybody, my name is Monique Schaefer. I am originally from San Jose, California, and I actually moved to San Diego when I was in high school. So I guess I'm a San Diego native. And my role in the lab is research assistant. And what that means is I actually assist with moving projects in the lab, specifically under postdocs or graduate students.
Thanks, Monique. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with our first question. So this is for Sarah. I'll go ahead and ask you, what advice do you have for high school students that want to pursue a career in STEM field?
Okay, if I'm first, maybe I'll take the obvious answer then. So most careers in science are going to require a college degree. Not everything, but a lot of things do. So go to college. And then maybe more specifically, while you're there, try and get a feel for what working STEM folks actually do. So look for opportunities to interact with people who are actually doing STEM jobs. From that word blob in the beginning, it looks like a lot of people are interested in being doctors, and being a doctor is a great career. If that's really interesting to you, go for it. But there's a lot of other things out there that you just might not be as familiar with because you haven't come across these people before. So see what's out there, see what you like and actually want to do.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I think that's great advice to get out there and explore different careers and see what possibilities in science there are. I'll go ahead and move on to Jasmine and see if Jasmine has any advice on how to pursue careers in STEM.
Yeah, so I went to the Alabama School of Fine Arts and I was in the math science department. So I thought I would learn a lot about the different careers that, science could take you, but, doctor was kind of the one that was always talked about, and like being a scientist was never something that I thought was really real, like I would see it in TVs and I'm like, oh, like, that's not real. I don't know how to get there. And so it really wasn't until I started in undergrad and I started in a lab that I realized, I really enjoy doing this. So like, my advice would be stay open-minded. I'm in my PhD program right now, but I am studying neurological disorders, specifically schizophrenia. And I do have, aspirations to go to medical school later and be a psychiatrist. So there's definitely options to explore and see exactly what you want to do, and you don't need to know exactly what that is right now. It's obviously great to have goals and, try different things like Sarah said, but just stay open-minded because you never know when you're really going to enjoy something.
Thanks, Jasmine. Great advice. Monique, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that I think there's not really any conventional route to a STEM career. I can give an example about my sort of path to where I am now. I was initially interested actually in being a doctor, and I started volunteering in a research lab to get some experience, and I ended up liking research actually, and that's how I ended up where I am now. So there really is, you start off thinking you want to do one thing, but it's having an open mind, I think, when you're interested in STEM is key. It will take you anywhere, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, Monique. I had a similar kind of experience when I started where I wasn't too sure exactly which avenue of research I wanted to pursue. I started out in marine ecology and I really enjoyed that, but then I found my way to neuroscience. So yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. So the next question is, what is something you have learned on your journey to becoming a scientist that has changed your life? And I think I'll just kind of leave that open and see if anybody wants to go ahead and jump in, maybe give that a little bit of thought.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about why I've chosen the specific path I chose. So in undergrad, I not only majored in neuroscience, but I had a minor in philosophy. And it was really interesting for me to see the link between the two. So I do recommend, even if you're interested in science, do take other classes in undergrad, maybe get a minor. Just because it is really interesting to see how, arts, humanities, science all link together. And so I specifically was really interested in the question of what makes people the way they are. Specifically, I took this one class that it was who is blameworthy. And so, we saw a lot of cases about, people who had committed crimes and kind of the background of their childhood. And it made me realize, a lot of the way our brain is shaped is not only because of our genetics, but the experiences we've had. And one thing I learned was that 14 to 50% of the homeless population has schizophrenia. And where I was from, that was close to 50%. And so it made me realize how detrimental this disorder could be. And so that's kind of led me to study this disorder and, hopefully find the mechanisms leading to it and better treatment options. And that's another reason I do want to go to medical school and be a psychiatrist, so I can actually see those patients as well.
Thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, I think that's a really strong motivation, is being able to help these people and understand these neurological disorders a little bit better. Maybe something we learn can lead to a therapeutic option for them. So yeah, I think that's a great cause.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in as the next person to answer. So Jasmine took a little more of a societal approach. I can share more of a personal impact that science has had on me, which is, I think science has really taught me how to fail and keep going. I think during your school career, if you're pursuing a STEM degree, a lot of people you find in science, they had a pretty good time in school, and so they liked their classes, they were getting pretty good grades. And I think science is the unknown. And no matter how good your plan is, how smart you are, there's a lot of things that just aren't going to work. And so I think learning to deal with that and to just kind of pick yourself up and keep going and to not take the failure personally, I think that's been a big thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And yeah, it definitely takes a little bit of grit, I think, to be a researcher. That's a good quality to have, but in the end, it's really rewarding and exciting. Monique, do you have anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I think for me, what I always wanted to pursue a career in something that would make an impact in the world, or hence why I wanted to be a doctor. But I think I realized after my exposure to research that I could actually make an impact also being a researcher. And the line of research that I'm specifically interested in is on autism spectrum disorder. So any sort of advances or discoveries that we can make can really help try to understand the origins of autism and how we can help children that are suffering from autism. So just being able to give a little contribution to that is what's changed my life and keeping me motivated.
Yeah, thank you, Monique. Maybe I can go ahead and follow up with you on this next question. Are there any genes specifically you're looking at in research, maybe in autism, like you mentioned? And maybe you can go a little bit more into what you're trying to find out regarding autism.
Yeah, so autism is a very complex psychiatric disease. And so there are a series of genes that we now know from research studies that are implicated in autism. So we're trying to take a sort of more global interest in autism. And so we're using specifically, as Sarah introduced in the video, brain organoids. So what brain organoids are is they allow us actually the opportunity to sort of recreate the brain in a dish, since accessing human brains are very difficult because they're protected, and you can't really say, hey, I'm going to take your brain and look at it. So this is a way that we get around to being able to look at the brain and neurodevelopment in general. And so what we're trying to do is trying to figure out what's happening during this development by looking at these brain organoids to try to figure out if there's something that we can maybe change, or we can look at more specifically.
Thanks, Monique.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move on to Sarah. Is there any specific genes that you study that are interesting, and how are you pursuing the function of those genes?
Yeah, so I'm interested in memory and sort of how the brain changes with experience. And so some of the genes that I'm interested in are the ones that tend to get turned on or turned off when a cell is active. So you can take a particular cell, and we have ways of looking at how much of a particular gene is actually present in that cell. And so when something happens to you and a certain type of neuron in your brain is responding, then what kind of genes are responsible for keeping that message alive? And I do that mostly in tissue samples of the brain and looking at what sorts of genes are expressed there.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Are there any genes you're really excited about, Jasmine? Or pursuing?
So I'm just starting the research, and specifically I'm interested in this type of cell in the brain called microglia, which are the immune system of the brain. And I think this mutations in these microglia could be leading to schizophrenia. So I'm actually trying to discover if there are mutations and what those genes may be. So stay tuned, and maybe I'll figure it out.
Great. I think this next question, and would be great for Monique, it's a tissue culture related question. So when you're working in tissue culture, what happens when the cells get contaminated? And how do you know when they're contaminated?
So with working with cell culture, as I think Sarah also mentioned in the video, was that the cells themselves don't really have an immune system. So they are sort of able to get contamination from bacteria or fungus, or also yeast infections as well. So there's many different forms of contamination that can happen. And so a lot of the times, we as people are handling these cells in the safety cabinet. But we're trying to control for all the variables of preventing contamination. It's not a perfect thing. So when you do unfortunately get contamination, a lot of the times what ends up happening is the media, which provides all the nutrients for the cells essentially. It changes color, or you see a visible difference in the media, like you can see floating particulates in there. So if it's bacteria, you sometimes can look under a microscope and you can see these little moving organisms, and okay, there's something wrong with this. So a lot of the times that's how we can visually see that there's contamination.
Yeah, it does happen, unfortunately. It is disappointing when you come in and sometimes you see this cloudiness in your culture, like that really extreme yellowing of the media because it gets so acidic from the bacteria in there. Yeah, that's disappointing, but going back to kind of what Sarah said about, having this grit and resilience in research, that's where it kind of comes in. So you kind of just get back in there and you keep going, keep culturing, and keep learning new things. Okay, so we can go back to Jasmine maybe. The question is, what did you study in college to help you get to this career field?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I majored in neuroscience and, had a huge interest in philosophy. But I would say, major in whatever you're interested in. You can take science classes. It doesn't necessarily have to be your major. I will say if you're interested in applying for graduate school, it is good to have those courses that you're applying for. So if you're applying to biology, it's good to have those biology courses. And I would say the most important thing, though, is to try out, research fields and actually have experiences there. And as Monique was saying, like, not everyone has the same path. So a lot of people have taken time off, worked in industry, which is really cool. And I feel like that's becoming the norm, sort of, to take time off, figure out what you want to do, and then go to graduate school or medical school or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think that kind of leads into like some more advice I have, like don't rush it. Like make sure you know what you want to do, because like medical school, PhD programs, those are long programs. So you want to make sure you are really interested in it. But also if, a lot of questions I've gotten also are like, oh, like what was your GPA? And I would say, obviously, try your best, get the best grades you can get. But don't ever feel like you can't do something because you've made a bad grade. You can always, come back from it and, show in your research experience that, I might not be best at testing, but look at, these publications and these presentations I've done. So I would say no matter like what happens, you can definitely achieve whatever your goal is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I think taking some time off actually kind of helps me to figure out what I wanted to do. I worked in industry for a few years before I decided to go back and get my master's and my PhD. So taking that time kind of led me back into the biomedical research field. Yeah, those are excellent points. I think this next question is really interesting, and I think I will direct it towards Sarah. So what is the greatest thing about discovering things? So what are you most excited about learning in the future?
Yeah, I think the greatest thing about discovering things is you get to be the first person to know something that nobody else in the world knows when you're first looking at that data from the experiment. And I think that's always exciting. Even even once you make it through grad school and more advanced in your career, that's still fun. And the one I'm most excited about learning in the future is really what is making brains tick. So what is the connection between the cells that we have and then how we interact with the world, motivations and how all that gels together to become a more complex and just integrated machine. Yeah, I think we really don't know a lot of things about the brain so far. Even something that you would think would be simple, the neurons that process visual information, they look a lot like the neurons that process sound. But then there's some magic that happens, and we experience sound and sight as very different things. Why is that? I think there's a lot that we still don't know.
Yeah, those are really exciting questions. There's so much that you can investigate with the brain. Yeah, neuroscience is a great complex topic. So Monique, this is a brain organoid question. So do brain organoids have action potentials?
Actually, Sarah, I know you were doing some work with.
Yeah,
I'll redirect it to you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I have been doing some electrophysiology lately. We've been doing MEA recordings. So the brain organoids do have action potentials and their neurons fire. They spontaneously fire. They seem to have neural networks. So the neurons will have some sort of, they would sync up with each other. So maybe when one neuron fires and then you see another neuron fire. but this happens kind of spontaneously, and it is really interesting to think about what's going on there. Something that I think about a lot is the fact that these organoids don't have any sensory input. So all of these things are kind of happening spontaneously. So I find just very interesting how that works. So this is a great question. I think I can just kind of leave this open. I think, does lab work ever get monotonous or long?
I think obviously like any job it can, but I think like the exciting thing about science is like you may be using the same technique for different experiments, but it could be to answer a completely different question. And I think that's what led me to want to do science and not only go to medical school, because I was just so excited about creating my experiments, you know, and like actually being able to ask a question. So like, you know, with schizophrenia, I'm like, why, you know, we see in postmortem brains, we see the spines on their neurons, there's a lot less of them. And why is that? And I think I would feel, I don't know what the word is, but I would be sad to not be able to answer those questions, or at least try. So I think, you know, definitely days can be long and experiments can be hard, but I wouldn't say my everyday life is monotonous ever with science, and that's one of the reasons I love it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say if you are asking a question that you're really interested in, that really gives you the energy that you need on a day that is a little bit longer than you had planned. You're really invested in this question, and you know that these hours are put there for good reason.
It can be gratifying, I think, in the end, once you feel like, yes, a lot of science, what we do is, reproducing results, right? And that can also feel at some point, monotonous, but in the end, it can be gratifying when you finally do that experiment, 4 times, and you say, oh, I'm finally getting those results that I expect, because I can believe that it's a real, result. So it's, yeah, I completely agree with everybody else.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all. The next question, I guess I will start with Sarah. What does a day in your life look like, and how has this changed since the pandemic?
Yeah, so it has definitely changed since the pandemic. I don't think that anybody ever thought before this that science could be a remote occupation. And I think all of us have had varying levels of success in transitioning to that. So at this point in the pandemic, I go into the lab once or twice a week, but I have a few people who are working with me that do a lot of the hands-on work that you need to be there, physically at a microscope or physically in the lab and using particular equipment for. So I would say on days when I go into the lab, I'm running experiments, I'm working with samples, I'm taking images on our microscopes. And when I'm not there, I am often writing papers or grants. I am reading to figure out what is new in the field and where I should take my experiments next. And I think, like a lot of people right now, I also spend a fair amount of time in little Zoom meetings and just trying to keep lines of communication open with other researchers about ideas, and also with the lab support team trying to figure out how to keep the lab running.
Thanks, Sarah. Monique, has your life changed in the lab significantly since the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with human cells, so I'm actually having to come in every day, as the cells require everyday attention and media feeds. And so, yeah, at the beginning it was a little bit challenging to come in and keep a social distance from others. A lot of what we do in science is collaborative. So what it means is talking to other people other researchers and discussing ideas, and so it was definitely challenging at the beginning. But now I think we've almost a year in, have gotten a way to manage doing things safely and still doing our science. And so thankfully, being able to do things over digitally like we're doing now has really helped.
Yeah, definitely. That leads into our next question, actually, very nicely. So you kind of mentioned this fact that there is this collaboration in research. So the next question is, how much of lab life is teamwork towards a shared goal versus your own personal research goals? So maybe I can move to Jasmine, maybe?
Yeah, so actually I'm not only in the Gage lab, but I'm also in the Thai lab, and maybe you heard from them earlier this week. So just that shows you, there's collaboration not only within a lab, but across labs as well. And that's one thing I really love about Salk. The community is pretty small, and so a lot of people work together. And specifically in the Thai lab, there are, different teams that you can join, which I think is really cool. And I do have like my own personal project in both the Gage lab and the Thai lab. But I do hope to, take on some undergraduates to mentor and have them part of my team, and, maybe eventually have technicians working with me as well. So it's definitely a collaborative field, and you can choose if you want to try to do it alone. But I would suggest, making a team, having people contribute, because not only is it helpful to have people doing the physical work, but it's also helpful to, have a different perspective. Like maybe someone will have an idea for an experiment that you didn't think of. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are some great points. Yeah, I really agree with them. I think having these other perspectives and other people's opinions is such an advantage in research. It's something that really helps. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it's going more and more towards teams over time as science brings in different fields to answer questions. I think you definitely, as a grad student, you have to make sure that you have a project that's sort of yours and you can take it from beginning to end, where you're the brains behind most of the operation and it's really your idea that you're working through. But even at that phase where you're getting your PhD, you definitely need some support to help you. So you might have, say, we call them a core facility. So it's basically a group of people at your institution that are really good at one particular thing. And so you don't have to learn everything right up front. You can lean on those people a little bit and do some of these complicated techniques that they've spent years trying to master. And I think to get some good quality work out there, teams are getting bigger and working more across institutes and even across international boundaries at this point.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can go ahead and move on to our final question. So I'll ask Monique, what is it like being a woman in a male-dominated field? And do you have any advice to share with aspiring female scientists?
I think being a woman in a male-dominated field is something that, it does stand out when you're working in research, but I think fortunately it's something that it's been getting some notice that there are women that are not, there's not as many women in STEM fields. And so I think that what's really helped me being in this field is just being well aware, or sort of my ideas and my role in the lab. That not really thinking so much that I'm a woman in this field, but just considering myself as an equal colleague. and not thinking so much about my gender. And so, at least for me, that's sort of what helps me get through that.
Thanks, Monique. Okay, we'll move on to Sarah. Sarah?
Yeah, maybe I'll add to that every lab is a little bit different. And so seek out a lab that looks like it has a good relationship with the female colleagues that are there. And in our lab, for example, there are a lot of women. I don't think we would have had 4 people on the panel if there weren't. So look for those places that do seem supportive. And another thing that you can do is try to give your female colleagues a boost. So if they've got a good idea, give them some support. Say, hey, Monique, that's a great idea. How can I help you make that happen? And sort of help each other, even if that person is facing some boundaries from elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Jasmine.
One thing I've learned to be is very vocal. My first week of graduate school, a white male, he, jokingly said, "Oh, like you're the token student because you're the brown queer girl from Alabama." And, even though it was a joke, it still, I obviously remember it. And I think, just stand up for yourself. Just say, hey, I am here because I, did great science and we're both in the same place. So, you're not somehow above me. And don't let people mansplain you. Just call it out and you will see that it definitely stops after a while. And as Sarah was saying, boost up women, but also if you do end up working for a PI who is a male and you do want a woman PI, there's definitely, or you want a woman mentor, there's postdocs that can mentor you and, provide that guidance to show you like these fields are possible. Or you can even just reach out to faculty and have those relationships with a woman just to see how their journey was different, what they did differently, because we still have not reached the point where it's as easy for women as it is for men. And that's not just being a woman, it's being a person of color, being queer, or anything that is an underrepresented minority in science. So I would say, reach out to people that you see look like you or represent you, and they are in those positions that you want to be in, and see, what do they do in their journey? Get advice from them. So I would say, just reach out to people, make connections, and that's going to be the best thing you can do.
All right. Thank you so much to our incredible panelists. Thank you, Monique, Sarah, Jasmine, and Sarah for joining us, for sharing a little bit about your research and about your journey through STEM. We are so grateful for your participation. Thank you so much to Dr. Rusty Gage for allowing us a glimpse inside your lab and for contributing to this event. Students, if you want to learn more about the Gage Lab's work, please visit our website. If you want to stay connected with salk.edu, make sure to follow us on Twitter to get updates on all of our high school programs. But for now, we'll say goodbye. And again, thanks to all of our panelists. We'll see you sometime soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.